The Book of Bias, a radical shift that will change your life. Introduction: Unveiling the Mind's Hidden Architects. Have you ever stopped to consider that beneath our certainties and confident choices lurk silent, invisible forces that shape our perceptions, mold our beliefs, and quietly steer the rudder of our decision-making? What if I told you that, right now, you might be under the subtly coercive influence of biases you haven't even noticed, biases that dictate your judgments, your likes and dislikes, those spontaneous gut reactions you trust so implicitly? This is exactly where we're going to embark on a thought-provoking journey, diving deep into the latent biases that reside within all of us. Think about the last time you made an important decision. Did you feel completely independent and objective, or could you, upon reflection, sense the tug of an unseen bias nudging you toward a particular choice? It's like there's an invisible puppeteer gently pulling the strings, nudging us this way or that, ever so slightly but with remarkable consistency. Bias isn't just a concept confined to academic discussions or the occasional scandal headline. It's a day-to-day reality, an integral part of the human experience. And it's not all dire. The content of this book is structured around a fundamental belief that you can identify and undo the knot of these biases, that you can navigate the tricky waters of the unconscious mind and ultimately take command of the ship. We're not just going to talk about biases, we're going to provide you with practical, actionable techniques that can help you tease out these biases, bring them into the light, and, most importantly, overcome them to enhance your personal and professional lives. What's exciting is that this guide is your map and compass in this quest, a secret source of the strategies that can empower you to regain control over the submerged part of your decision-making iceberg. With deceitful delicacy, these biases can, indeed, poison relationships, impede career progression, and cloud our judgment in life's most pivotal moments. Take a moment to ponder this. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship where misunderstanding seems to breed like wildfire, or at a career crossroad, overwhelmed by the fear of making the wrong choice? These situations can often be the surface tremors of deeper cognitive biases. Whether it's the allure of the familiar in the form of a comfort zone, the reflexive nod to authority regardless of our own wisdom, or the stubborn grip of first impressions marring the full story, biases impact us all. But here's the promise: this is not a talent reserved for the gifted few. No one is born with an innate immunity to bias. It's a skill, a muscle you can exercise and strengthen over time with the right guidance. Think of it as untangling a complex knot. It's daunting at first, but with patience and a clear strategy, it unravels. The techniques and exercises offered in this guide are the fingers that will help untie the knot, allowing you to weave the strings of your thoughts into a tapestry that is truly your own design. As we begin with the fundamental concepts in the early chapters, we'll explore the origins of biases, how they are born, and the multifaceted ways in which they infiltrate our thinking. With each chapter, we will layer on more advanced techniques, akin to a hiker's progression from familiar trails to the uncharted wilderness. We'll prepare and equip you to face the unknown inner terrain. We'll delve into the neurology behind bias, how our brains, marvelous in complexity, are also susceptible to taking cognitive shortcuts that can lead to error-prone patterns. And as we progress, we'll introduce you to the invisible key, the catalyst for cognitive freedom, and the means by which you will unlock the restrictive cage of your conditioning. A thrilling part of the journey is where the abstract becomes tangible, where you get to feel the change as it's happening. The anecdotes, reflections, and prompts throughout the book serve not only to illustrate points, but also serve as handholds, grips that you can use to pull yourself upwards, towards mental clarity and better decision-making. Think of it as a mental workout regimen designed to enhance the flexibility and strength of your mind, enabling you to climb to new heights of personal insight and professional acumen. By the time we ascend to the later chapters, recounting real-life examples and scenarios becomes a powerful tool. These stories will serve as both mirrors and windows, offering introspection and a view into the transformative power of confronting and overcoming biases. Each subsequent chapter will celebrate milestones achieved, reinforcing not only the learning but also the exhilaration that comes with personal growth. This 1 hour might not just change the way you think, it could change the lens through which you view the world, your relationships, and your path in life. Secure your foothold here, at the beginning, and prepare to challenge the biases that you didn't even know you had, to rewire and sculpt your thought processes, and to take the transformative leap into living with intention and clarity amidst a world perfused with bias. Remember, the very act of asking yourself difficult questions is the first step toward expanding your cognitive frontiers. As we set forth, be ready to embrace not just the answers that comfort, but also the ones that challenge and provoke change. In these pages lies a map to new mental landscapes, a compendium of knowledge, a collection of tools, and a series of progressive leaps, all designed with the ultimate goal of empowering you, the listener, to not only identify and correct for bias, but to leverage this new mastery in creating a life of heightened understanding and fulfillment. Chapter 1: Unveiling the Veiled Assumptions, the Birth of Bias. Have you ever wondered why we think the way we do? How do certain thoughts naturally feel right or true to us, while others are instantly dismissed? The answers to these questions lie not only in the vast, complex landscape of our individual experiences, but also in a frequently overlooked aspect of human cognition, the birth of bias. Biases are the silent whispers of our subconscious, the invisible architects of our perceptions. They are the byproducts of a brain seeking shortcuts. These cognitive shortcuts, known as heuristics, allow us to navigate a world teeming with more information than we can meticulously scrutinize. Over time, biases have become an efficient way for our ancestors to make rapid decisions, for example, the ability to distinguish between benign and potentially deadly situations without conscious reasoning. However, in our modern, complex society, these shortcuts can form on a less immediately practical basis and often result in judgments that are less about survival and more about comfort with the familiar and habitual. The roots of bias are as ancient as human history itself, entwined with the instinct for survival. Early humans developing cognitive frameworks for making sense of the world didn't have the luxury of reflection and could not afford the risk of second-guessing their gut feelings when it came to identifying friend or foe. Herein lies the kernel from which bias sprouts, a primal, unconscious reaction to an often ambiguous world. As we progress through centuries, our need to rapidly read our environment remained, but the complexities of our societies increased, weaving biases into the very fabric of our social constructs. In the process of growing up, our fresh, uninhibited minds are filled with imprints of what we see, hear, and experience. Family, friends, and the media plant seeds that blossom into ingrained ideas. For example, think of the simple act of lining up toys as a child. This might be our first brush with categorization, a critical intellectual skill. Yet, as innocent as it is, this act is the beginning of a pattern. We start categorizing not just toys, but people, experiences, and information, often according to subjective or inherited criteria. These frameworks carry us through school, where we learn not just subjects but social structures, and follow us into the workplace, where corporate hierarchies and cultural narratives further sculpt our perspectives. Consider the biases stemming from geographical locations. Someone born and raised in a busy urban city may develop an implicit bias that equates hustle and crowds with excitement and opportunity. In contrast, someone from a rural area could associate tranquility and open spaces with contentment and well-being. Neither is false, but each belief is colored by the environment that imprinted those biases. All these biases are not malice incarnate, they are misdirected survival instincts. When our biases are challenged, we get a pang of discomfort, a dissonance between what we believe to be true and the contradictory information we are presented with. This discomfort is a significant hindrance to recognizing our biases and inhibits our ability to make impartial decisions. Biases are not overt, they do not announce their presence. Instead, they weave themselves into the very threads of thoughts, masquerading as intuitions and gut feelings, and it is here, in their stealth, that they hold remarkable sway over our life choices. Unknowingly, we rely on these biases to make life more manageable. They remove the burden of analysis paralysis, enabling us to proceed amid the barrage of daily decisions we must make. From what brand of cereal we buy to what candidate we vote for, our biases whisper suggestions, tugging at the reins of our will. Moreover, these biases are not just individual. They echo the thoughts and trends of our society, reinforcing popular sentiments and sometimes hindering progress by holding on to outdated or disproved notions. Furthermore, businesses and political entities understand the power of bias all too well, which is why advertising and propaganda are so successful and long-lasting. They tap directly into biases, sometimes to alert us to genuinely beneficial products or ideas, other times to lure us into aligning with an ideology or purchasing a product we might not need. Those who craft messages and narratives in our world often do so with a keen psychological acumen. They know which chords to strike to invoke the biases that serve their goals. It may seem daunting then, the task of identifying and addressing these biases within ourselves. But knowledge is power, and understanding bias is the first pivotal step toward intellectual emancipation. To equip ourselves with the tools to recognize bias, we must educate ourselves, reflect upon our beliefs, and openly discuss thoughts and experiences with others. It is through this kind of tireless self-scrutiny and open dialogue that we build awareness of the unconscious, culturally inherited reflexes that guide our judgments and decisions. The challenge to conquer biases is, at its core, a deeply personal endeavor, the unsung hero's journey. It demands courage, for it is an invitation to step out of the comfortable shade of long-held beliefs into the sometimes harsh sunlight of self-awareness. It beckons intellectual humility, as one must recognize that we all harbor prejudices and be willing to reshape or relinquish them. Most of all, it is a cornerstone of growth, to see beyond the veil our minds have draped upon reality, to question the very essence of our thought patterns, and to understand that our biases, while once protectors of our predecessors, must be evolved to suit the diverse, multifaceted world we now inhabit. As we move forward to explore how these assumptions color every aspect of our lives, it's imperative to remain grounded in the realization that we are all students of the mind. By learning to identify and disarm our biases, we transform not only our thought processes but also the collective consciousness of our communities. The goal is enlightenment, not merely in a philosophical sense but in a concrete, practical manner. It is the self-awareness that empowers us to think, choose, and live with intention, free from the invisible chains of unexamined belief. The journey begins with acknowledging the birth of bias, and it continues as we strive to understand ourselves and the world around us with ever clearer eyes. When we reflect upon our own beliefs and judgments, it's tempting to consider them as personal and unique to us, untouched by the outside world. Yet, this is a common misconception. Our viewpoints are more like a mosaic, shaped and colored by a multitude of external influences that we absorb throughout our lives. Imagine, if you will, a tapestry. This isn't just any tapestry, but rather the narrative of your life, with each thread representing a different experience, value, or belief. These threads are not spun by us alone, but are often handed to us by the society we grow up in, the people we interact with, and the cultural norms that pervade our existence. This societal mirror reflects back to us not just who we are but, more powerfully, who we should be. The influence of society on our biases is profound. From an early age, we are taught, both overtly and covertly, the expectations and norms of our culture. We learn how to behave, what to value, and how to think. Yet we are rarely taught to question the origins of these beliefs. They come to us via our parents, our education systems, our peers, and media narratives. These norms press upon us like the pages of a tightly shut book, compressing our ideas and outlooks into a predetermined shape. Let's take a practical example to truly understand the influence of culture on our biases. Consider the concept of success. Success in many societies is often measured by material wealth, job titles, or academic achievements. This societal benchmark is a powerful shaper of personal ambition and self-esteem. We might find ourselves pursuing career paths or educational qualifications not out of personal passion or curiosity, but because they are markers of success that society has instilled in us. It is only through introspection and critical questioning that we can discover if our pursuit of success is truly ours or something we've been conditioned to chase. The biases inherited from societal norms are not always as benign as striving for conventional success. They can permeate and affect how we interact with others, often leading to prejudices and stereotypes. These biases can be based on race, gender, class, or religion and are perpetuated through systemic structures and everyday interactions. Even without malicious intent, societal biases can seep into our psyche, influencing how we view and treat others, sometimes to detrimental effects. Breaking free from these societal biases requires us to recognize these patterns, unpack them, and consciously choose to deviate from the prejudiced pathways that have been paved by history and tradition. Another powerful facet of societal influence is the formation of in-groups and out-groups, which serve to solidify our sense of belonging and identity but also act as breeding grounds for biases. Humans are social creatures, and our need to belong can sometimes override our rational judgment. The desire to fit in with a particular social group can make us adopt certain biases that are held by that group, often without fully realizing their implications or origin. Once those biases are adopted, they tend to become self-perpetuating, a feedback loop that reinforces the group's existing beliefs and norms. However, it's crucial to recognize that society, while powerful, is not monolithic. It is dynamic and heterogeneous, comprising various subcultures and counter-narratives that offer alternative perspectives. Engaging with diverse groups and viewpoints can illuminate the biased lenses we may not even realize we peer through. It is by grappling with different life experiences, narratives, and philosophies that we can begin to disentangle our individual thoughts from the collective ethos. The process of recognizing and dismantling societal biases is akin to an archaeological dig. It requires patience, diligence, and a willingness to sometimes confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our societies. It's about sifting through the layers of time-worn sediment to uncover the artifacts of belief that lie beneath our conscious decisions. And while each discovery may provide more questions than answers, it is a crucial part of understanding the full history of our personal narrative. To bridge the gap between self-awareness and societal norms, one practical step is to actively seek experiences outside of your comfort zone. This might involve traveling, learning about different cultures, or simply conversing with individuals whose life experiences differ vastly from your own. These experiences can act as a catalyst, challenging and expanding your worldview. It's as if you're a fish that has been swimming in clear water, suddenly thrust into a vibrant coral reef. The shock of color and diversity challenges every preconceived notion you had about the ocean, urging you to adapt and reconsider your place within the aquatic tapestry. The pursuit of self-improvement in the context of societal biases is not a solitary journey. It involves the willingness to listen, the humility to admit our biases, and the courage to change them. As we engage with varying perspectives and challenge our own, we offer ourselves the possibility to grow, to modify the tapestry of our beliefs into something more inclusive and reflective of the multifaceted world we are part of. By acknowledging the societal mirror's role in shaping our biases, we take the first step towards reclaiming the agency over our beliefs and decisions. It is a journey not of self-criticism but of self-empowerment. With each bias we uncover, we move closer to a more genuine version of ourselves and a greater understanding of the complex, beautifully diverse world in which we live. Chapter 2: The Invisible Strings That Pull Us. The puppeteers, identifying external influences in our everyday decisions. As we embark upon this chapter, it's essential to remember that amidst the kaleidoscope of our daily experiences, there's a subtly transformative concept we introduced earlier, a solution that's both potent and promising in its ability to illuminate our path towards self-improvement. Now, let's delve into the heart of this chapter, where understanding the puppeteers of our mind is not just crucial, but it is indeed the secret solution to untangling the web of biases that shape our perceptions and choices. Imagine that each decision we make is not entirely our own, but rather like a marionette's dance, choreographed by invisible strings manipulated by skilled puppeteers. These puppeteers are everywhere, from the billboards that color our desires, to the social media algorithms that dictate what we see and believe. They're in the cultural norms passed down through generations, in the echoing chambers of our closest circles, and even in the subtleties of language that guide our thoughts in directions we scarcely notice. To unravel the influence of these puppeteers is to understand that our decisions are often the result of an intricate dance of external factors that pluck at our cognitive strings. Advertisers, for instance, are maestros of persuasion, understanding just how to appeal to our emotions, our desires for belonging, for status, for comfort. They play upon our vulnerabilities with the precision of a virtuoso, embedding messages in our subconscious that can guide our purchasing habits, often without our awareness. And it's not just advertisers. Politicians and media outlets understand the power of repetition and emotive language in shaping public opinion. They often present information in a way that confirms existing biases, cultivating a narrative that serves their interests. This systematic shaping of our worldview can have profound implications for our perceptions of reality and, in turn, the choices we make about our lives and our society. Cultural norms and societal expectations also serve as puppeteers, whispering the scripts of how things are done into our receptive ears. From a young age, we're taught the limits of acceptable behavior, the definitions of success, the gender roles we're meant to embody. These norms function as guide ropes, directing our path in such a subtle manner that we may never question whether they align with our personal values and beliefs. Our personal networks, friends, family, colleagues, can be puppeteers too, albeit more personal and immediate ones. Their expectations and worldviews can influence, consciously or unconsciously, the decisions we face. Human beings are inherently social creatures, and our innate desire to fit in and be accepted can cause us to align our decisions with those of the group, suppressing our unique preferences in favor of social harmony. Recognizing these external influences is the first step toward cutting the strings that bind us to them. It is an act of courage and critical thinking to question the motives behind the messages we receive, to weigh them against our internal compass, and to decide whether they deserve a place in the narrative of our lives. This critical awareness is the solution we're inching towards, a potent catalyst for personal growth and genuine autonomy. To harness this awareness, we must develop a vigilant mind, one that can detect when and how these forces exert their pull on us. It's like becoming a detective in your psychological thriller, searching for clues and uncovering the motives behind each influence. Start by asking probing questions. Why does this message resonate with me? Who benefits from me adopting this belief or making this decision? What part of my identity is being targeted by this influence? A key strategy in this endeavor is cultivating the strength to pause before reacting. This moment of pause grants us the space to reflect, to pull back the curtain and scrutinize the puppeteers before they coerce us into an unintended performance. In this pause lies the power to discern, to choose responses that align with our personal values rather than the scripted lines handed to us. Another transformative practice is mindful consumption. Whether it's the media we consume, the conversations we partake in, or the advertisements we're exposed to, being selective and critical can weaken the grip of undue influence. Make it a habit to diversify your sources, seek out opposing viewpoints, and challenge the echo chambers that reinforce only one perspective. This conscious engagement not only heightens our critical thinking but also broadens our worldview, enabling us to navigate the world with eyes wide open. As we identify and confront the puppeteers in our lives, there's a considerable measure of self-discovery and liberation to be had. We start to see where we've been complicit in our self-deception and where we've allowed external influences to overrule our inner voice. This realization might be disconcerting initially, but it is also the key to empowerment. We reclaim the narrative pen from the puppeteers and begin to author our authentic life story. The solutions, you'll see, are not ensconced in the esoteric or the inaccessible. They are woven into the fabric of our everyday existence, waiting for us to claim them. Just as a sculptor sees the figure within the marble and sets it free with chisel and hammer, so too can we chisel away the external influences that obscure the form of our genuine selves. Concluding this topic, it's essential to understand that the journey towards autonomy and authenticity isn't about severing all strings categorically. It's about being aware of which strings we want to keep, which serve our purposes, and learning to dance to the rhythm of our own drumbeats. This heightened awareness, resilience, and adaptability are the cornerstones of the solution we allude to, a solution as transformative as the convictions we hold dear, guiding us not to a life of passive reception, but one of deliberate, empowered action. You've embarked on a journey of self-discovery and have been peering through the lenses of society, scrutinizing the birth and composition of the biases that shape your worldview. With newfound awareness, you've begun to see the strings, the subtle and oft-hidden influences, that have been guiding your decisions and patterns of thought. Now, it's time to dive into the secret sauce, as previously hinted at in our introduction, that profound knowledge that will empower you to take the next critical step, breaking free. This hidden gem, this secret that has been alluded to, is no arcane mystery or quick fix, but rather a practical methodology rooted in mindfulness and critical thinking. It's about recognizing the puppeteers not just from the outside, but also those residing within our own minds, internalized beliefs and values that can surreptitiously pull the strings. To break free, you must become adept at identifying when you're being influenced and by who or what. This begins with the recognition that every piece of information that comes your way has the potential to sway you this way or that, subtly nudging your decisions, emotions, and even your sense of self. The secret, then, is reflection. Not the kind of fleeting thought you might give to what you'll have for dinner, but deep, purposeful introspection that demands honesty and courage to question even your most cherished beliefs and opinions. Consider this your invisible key, an internal tool that doesn't require anything but your willingness to question and challenge your own preconceptions. Start by asking yourself simple, yet profound questions like, why do I believe this? Or what is the origin of this opinion, and how does this belief serve me? The answers won't always be comfortable, but they will be illuminating. Employing the key means actively seeking opportunities to challenge your own perspectives. Look for instances that trigger a strong emotional response in you, be it a defensive reaction to a conflicting viewpoint, or an unquestioning agreement with someone who shares your beliefs. These moments are golden opportunities to catch bias in the act. They also allow you to practice stepping back to analyze why you're reacting the way you are and what unseen strings might be manipulating the situation. Another layer of employing the key involves creating spaces in your life for critical consumption. Every day we're bombarded with information, whether it's the news, social media, or conversations with friends and family. Diligent critical consumption means not accepting information at face value, but rather evaluating it with a disciplined eye. It involves checking the credibility of sources, considering other viewpoints, and recognizing when an argument is being made on the back of emotional appeal rather than solid evidence. This method extends into even the most mundane aspects of our lives. For example, when making purchasing decisions, reflect on what influences are at play. Is it peer pressure, clever marketing, or a genuine need? By deconstructing the process behind your choices, you begin to weaken the hold biases have on you, turning the invisible strings into threads you can cut. In conversations, employ the key by becoming an active listener. This doesn't mean just waiting for your turn to speak, but truly hearing what the other person is saying without immediately passing it through your own filter of biases. Probe beneath the surface with questions that reveal the subtext and undercurrents at play. It's a practice that not only frees you from the shackles of your own biases, but also encourages empathy and deeper understanding in your relationships. Developing this skill is not a linear journey, and you may find the biases that have long been part of your internal narrative are stubborn and resistant to change. But with time and persistence, employing these techniques becomes second nature, and the chains of conditioning and prejudice begin to loosen. Practicing this diligence will enable you to use the invisible key to unlock your cage of conditioning slowly but steadily. And the beauty of this key is that the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Each time you step back and recognize an unconscious bias, each time you question the source of your information or the motive behind a persuasive argument, every time you listen to understand rather than to respond, you are honing this skill. You are becoming the sculptor of your thought processes, intentionally shaping and refining your critical faculties. Embrace this invisible key and remember that the biases we hold are not permanent fixtures. They are reflections of what we've learned and absorbed, and just as they have been built, they can also be dismantled. This secret, once discovered, is a source of continuous growth, liberating you not only in the way you perceive the world, but also in how you engage with it, fostering an authenticity of thought that is both profoundly empowering and deeply liberating. Chapter 3: The Stories We Tell Ourselves. Narratives and Neurology: How Our Brains Construct and Cling to Biases. Have you ever caught yourself caught up in a captivating story? One that wraps its narrative vines around your thoughts, influencing how you see the world, how you perceive others, and, most significantly, how you understand yourself. Much like the power of a compelling novel or a blockbuster movie, the tales we weave in our minds about who we are, how the world works, and what we believe can become so enthralling that distinguishing between our inner fiction and reality becomes an overwhelming challenge. The fascinating truth is, this storytelling is more than a metaphorical pastime, it's neurologically hardwired within us, embedded into the very fabric of our brain. Just as a spider spins its web, our mind weaves complex tapestries of cognition and perception, entangled with threads of past experiences, emotions, and oftentimes, biases. These biases are like hidden script writers, subtly coloring the scenes of our mental stories without us ever noticing their influence. But why does our brain hold on to these biases with such tenacity, as if they were prized possessions? It begins with understanding our brain's primary mission: survival. In its quest to keep us alive and kicking, our brain thrives on efficiency and predictability. It adores shortcuts and labels, neatly categorizing the world into boxes that enable us to process information with astounding speed. This, unfortunately, is also where bias sneaks into our mental director's chair, dictating what we pay attention to and how we interpret it. Picture this: as a child, you might have had a negative experience with a dog. That single interaction led to the creation of a dogs are dangerous storyline that now plays on repeat whenever you encounter a fluffy four-legged creature. See that? One channel of experience becomes a rousing chorus of fear dictating future emotions and reactions, irrespective of the actual peacefulness or friendliness of other dogs you meet. What we often fail to recognize is that our brain's fondness for stories is not just about simplifying the world to navigate it more efficiently, it also works tirelessly to maintain a coherent narrative about our identity and beliefs. It avoids plot holes and loves character consistency to the point of stubbornness. So even when faced with new information that contradicts our long-held storylines, our brain prefers to stick with the familiar script. It's more comfortable that way, less mentally taxing. But not all is lost in this narrative dance of biases. The plasticity of the brain is our unsung hero. It refers to the brain's marvelous ability to reorganize itself, to change and adapt throughout life. Although our neural pathways have been paved with stories from the past, it's not a one-way street. Think of your brain as a garden and your thoughts and experiences as seeds. Some seeds grow into entrenched beliefs, let's call them our bias bushes. As we water them with repetitive thinking and validation from others who share similar outlooks, they flourish. Yet the ground is still fertile for new kinds of seeds. Seeds of objectivity, curiosity, and open-mindedness can generate new greenery if we give them a chance. We start by planting these new seeds of awareness. Just as a gardener tends to their soil, we must tend to the landscapes of our mind, questioning the origins of each bias bush. Have they sprouted from the seeds of truth, or were they merely responses to the whims of our emotions and societal influences? As we dig deeper, we unearth the biases that lurk beneath our consciousness, gently loosening their roots from our neurological ground. It's imperative to realize that these stories and neurologies are not permanent fixtures, but intricate neural networks, dynamic and malleable. We hold the power to rewrite the tales that no longer serve us, to reshape the characters that play the heroes and villains in our internal sagas. This process doesn't occur overnight, nor does it happen without a fair share of mental sweat. It requires mindfulness, a conscious awareness of our mental processes, and a willingness to examine the possibly tenuous facts that underpin our beliefs. As we confront these storylines, poking holes in their plot and testing the consistency of their characters, our brain's neural pathways can start to reroute. We transcend from passive readers of our internal narratives to active authors, deliberating on which parts of the story to edit, which to embellish, and which to write anew. Incremental changes in how we interpret our past and present experiences can lead to full-fledged rewritings of future chapters. It's as if we're not just reading a book, but jumping into the role of the writer, equipped with a bold red pen and an eager imagination, ready to craft a tale that aligns more closely with the truths we encounter. This flexibility, this willingness to rewrite and adapt, is critical in not just confronting biases, but evolving beyond them. The more we challenge our biases, the more adept we become at recognizing false storylines and eradicating them from the manuscript of our mind. As we break free from these narrative constraints, our actions and decisions begin to stem from a place of clarity and authenticity rather than the murky shadows of unexamined presuppositions. In essence, the tales we tell ourselves, informed by a complex interplay of psychology and neurology, can either solidify our biases or break them apart. They are not just fairy tales locked away in the recesses of our mind, they are the daily scripts that guide our hand as we interact with the world. Recognizing the authority we have over these stories is the first step in our quest to foster a mental environment where biases no longer write the plotlines of our lives. Imagine you're walking through a dense forest, one you've journeyed through countless times. The path is so familiar that your footsteps almost find their way without your conscious thought. In the forest of our minds, these well-worn paths are the stories we tell ourselves, stitching together fragments of experiences, teachings, and emotions into the fabric of our identity. These stories are more than mere anecdotes, they are the architects of our reality and, more crucially, the silent narrators of our biases. The tales of our mental tapestry are not spun from thin air, they're woven with the threads of repetition, emotion, and familiarity. Just as a catchy tune finds its way more readily to our tongues when hummed again and again, these stories and biases embed themselves within us through consistent reinforcement. The brain, our masterful but economical organ, clings to these narrates because they provide a swift shortcut for processing the multitude of information that washes over us each day. It favors the well-trodden neural pathways, just as a river favors its established course. Yet, here lies the seed of change, a subtle hint about uncovering the next chapter of our journey, where we will delve into the deep and intriguing quest to unlock the cage of our conditioning. Understanding our biases begins with acknowledging their existence, but the real transformation unfolds when we tease out the underpinnings of these narratives and question their validity. It's an almost Herculean task to examine the stories that have comforted us in the dark and shaped our view of the light, and yet it's a journey that holds the promise of a liberated consciousness. Exploring the brain's narrative isn't merely intellectual indulgence. Grasping this concept is akin to a detective piecing together motives behind a perplexing whodunit. At the heart of it, our biases are our brain's motives for making the world comprehensible. If we can learn why our mind insists that A leads to B, we can begin to envision a world where B may be just as likely to stem from C, D, or an entirely new letter we've yet to comprehend. Understanding the narratives inherent in our biases also involves recognizing the emotional tapestry that gives them color. Emotions are the catalysts for memories and judgments to stick. They act like the glue that cements a story into the crevices of our neural pathways. The fear from a dreaded experience, the joy from a cherished memory, these feelings anchor our biases in place. To alter the narrative is to venture into the alchemy of our emotions, transmuting the base feelings underlying our biases into a new emotional understanding. A daunting task? Absolutely, but not insurmountable. To change the narratives, we need to gently introduce disruptors, experiences, thoughts, and evidence that don't fit the mold of our existing stories. This infusion of cognitive diversity challenges the narrative monopoly ruling our biases. Introducing dissonant notes into the melody of our mind stories demands attention, creating a cognitive dissonance that we're compelled to resolve. It's here, in the discordance, that growth takes root, as we fling open the doors to new narratives that might serve us better. Consider the process of inoculation, where the introduction of a safe, controlled element stimulates the body's defenses against future threats. Similarly, by exposing ourselves to small and manageable doses of challenging information or alternative perspectives, we fortify our mental flexibility. Embracing new points of view, even, or especially, if they're initially uncomfortable, play a crucial role in the unraveling and revision of our internal stories. Each new narrative competes with entrenched biases, coaxing the mind to reassess its loyalties. Intertwined with the concept of disruptors is the budding realization that autonomy over our narrative is possible. Many of us go through life as passive recipients of stories, accepting them as the unalterable gospel of the mind. But what if, instead, we engaged with our narratives as editors rather than mere readers? This shift in perspective catapults us from feeling like victims of our biases to becoming craftsmen of our internal law. Crafting a new narrative demands an artistic blend of curiosity and skepticism. The willingness to question and explore why we think the way we do ushers in the ability to sculpt new pathways for thought. Each question we ask is a sculptor's tool, deftly chipping away at the monolith of our biases, revealing the refined form of open-minded thinking beneath. It's a reiterative process, one that leverages the power of reflective practice and mindful examination to reshape the contours of our mental landscape. Here we find ourselves poised at the edge of a transformative leap. By identifying and understanding the ingrained stories that shape our biases, we awaken to the empowering realization that we can rewrite these stories. Our cognitive soil is fertile, ready to be tilled and planted with narratives that enable us to grow in directions once stunted by the overbearing shadow of unexamined biases. Such a transformation is an evolution, a metamorphosis where the before is not obliterated but acknowledged and built upon. The biases we hold today are not the culmination of our mental growth, they are the cocoon from which we can emerge, unshackled by the silken ties of the tales we once believed without question. It's in this realization and the exploration of reauthoring our internal narratives that we set the stage for Chapter 4's adventure, Unlocking the Cage of Conditioning. Chapter 4, The Key to the Cage. Unlocking the cage of conditioning may sound like a daunting task. After all, this metaphorical cage has been built up over years or even decades of life experiences, learning, and the absorption of cultural, social, and familial norms. It encompasses the biases that we've been discussing, the assumptions we make without even realizing it, and the behavioral patterns that we've fallen into without conscious choice. But the good news is, just as a cage has a lock, our mental conditioning comes with a key, a specific method of self-awareness and critical thinking that allows us to step back, examine, and eventually dismantle the biases that constrain us. The first thing to understand about this key is that it is not one size fits all. However, it does start with a universal element that everyone possesses, the power of awareness. Becoming aware of the boundaries of your own mental cage is like finding the outlines of the keyhole. It involves constant and honest self-evaluation, a process where you begin to question your automatic thoughts and reactions. For example, take a moment to consider why you feel a certain way about a colleague's suggestion during a meeting. Is your reaction based on quick judgment, or is it an informed opinion? Scrutinizing such behaviors can be the starting point of your journey towards finding the key to the cage of conditioning. The invisible key to this metaphorical cage lies in learning to recognize when you are reacting based on deeply ingrained biases versus responding from a place of informed understanding. Biases can be so deeply embedded in our psyche that they often feel like integral parts of our personality or unchangeable truths about the world. Realizing that these truths can be challenged is like discovering that the key has been in your pocket all along, but you never thought to use it. Once you understand that awareness is the first step in crafting the key, you'll want to fine-tune the grooves and notches that will make it fit into the lock. This fine-tuning process is about developing the habits of critical thinking and balanced reflection. It involves questioning the immediate conclusions you jump to and instead, looking for evidence before forming beliefs and opinions. For instance, suppose you find yourself believing that a certain group of people are inherently good or bad at something. Instead of accepting this as fact, you'd critically analyze where this belief came from, what evidence supports or refutes it, and what alternative explanations there may be. In doing so, you're refining the teeth of your key, making it more likely to turn smoothly within the lock. Another dimension of the key comes from empathy and open-mindedness, which act as the handle giving you the leverage to turn it. Only when we can put ourselves in others' shoes and view the world through different perspectives are we able to see past our own preconceptions. This doesn't mean that we should accept every viewpoint as correct, but rather understand where they originate and why they might make sense to others. This helps in smoothing out our biases and adopting a more multifaceted view of the people and situations around us. Imagine you're faced with a disagreement. Instead of immediately taking sides based on your existing biases, you engage with all perspectives involved. You listen actively and inquire gently, aiming to understand rather than to win. You still hold your values and logical reasoning, but you do so with the humility that comes from recognizing that ultimate truth is often complex and multi-layered. Like the different parts of a key working in harmony, your empathy collaborates with critical thinking to unlock a formerly rigid mindset. But how does one start practicing such a sophisticated level of self-awareness and critical thinking? Begin by simply observing your thought patterns. Pay attention to your immediate reactions to people or events, especially those that are charged with emotion. Are you defensive? Dismissive? Curious? Enthusiastic? Each emotional response is a clue to underlying biases. When you're aware of this, you can decide deliberately to pause rather than letting your subconscious reactions dictate your actions. Another actionable step is to adopt a beginner's mind, approaching familiar situations as if you know nothing about them. This perspective allows you to see the old as new, to question what others take for granted, and to notice details that you may have missed before. It opens up the potential for new insights and frees you from the confines of your past conditioning. Even situations you think you understand completely can surprise you when you look at them with fresh eyes. Regular reflection is also a critical part of crafting this invisible key. It might mean writing down your thoughts and experiences in a journal, taking the time to meditate on your day, or even discussing your introspections with a trusted friend or mentor. The key point here is to create space where you can examine your biases and their impact without the noise of the outside world influencing you. It's in this space that you can spot the inconsistencies and flaws in your conditioned responses and begin the work of smoothing them out, perfecting the key that will unlock the cage. In addition to personal reflection, actively seeking out information and perspectives that challenge your existing beliefs is like adding strength to your key. When we expose ourselves to diverse viewpoints, we are forced to test the durability of our assumptions and to make room for the possibility that we might need to adjust or even abandon them. It is not always an easy or comfortable process, but it is a necessary one if you want a key that can truly unlock the deep-seated biases within. Finally, the act of unlocking the cage of conditioning is not a singular event but a continuous process. It includes those moments when you catch yourself in the act of bias, the effort you put into understanding other perspectives, and the courage it takes to change your mind in light of new evidence. This is much like the repetitive action needed to smooth out the rough edges of a key. Only through ongoing work can it fit the lock perfectly and turn effortlessly to release the latch. As you endeavor to find and fashion your invisible key, remember that few things worth doing come without challenge. But the rewards of this effort are immense: a freer, more informed, and more empathetic perspective on the world. With each tumble of the lock, you liberate yourself from the constraints of unconscious bias, open up to the immense diversity of human experience, and step ever closer to a life of authenticity and intellectual freedom. Having identified the various ways biases shape our decisions and outlook, it's time to delve into the practical applications of that knowledge. The invisible key we've been teasing? It's the conscious effort to recognize the biases that bind us and the commitment to use this awareness to break free. This applies to our day-to-day decisions, big life changes, and the way we interact with the world at large. Let's start with a seemingly simple concept that can have transformative effects: the notion of questioning everything. Think of a child, brimming with curiosity, who constantly asks why about the world around them. This simple, yet profound practice forces us to examine our motivations and beliefs. Each why peels back a layer of bias, revealing the core of our true thoughts. So, employ your inner child. Question the news article that riles you up, the job you think you should do because everyone says it's a good career, or even the products you buy because you've always bought them. This practice is about disentangling the threads of societal, cultural, and personal biases that weave the fabric of our perceived reality. Incorporating this key into our daily lives means taking specific, actionable steps. First, try the 3 whys technique next time you make a decision. For every answer you give, ask why again until you reach the 3rd level. Often, this is where the bias resides, dressed in the disguise of a logical reason. By questioning our reasons at a deeper level, we can catch bias off guard, yielding a more genuine, personal answer. You can also start journaling as a way of employing this invisible key. Writing down your thoughts and decisions can provide amazing insights into your patterns of thinking. Over time, patterns emerge from the pages, highlighting repeated bias-based decisions. In spotting these patterns, you have the opportunity to disrupt them. Consider also sharing your journal entries with a trustworthy friend or mentor. They might be able to spot biases with an outsider's clarity that you can't see yourself. Moreover, educating oneself constantly is a surefire way to employ the invisible key. The more we learn about different people, cultures, and ideas, the more we expand our understanding and challenge our preconceived notions. It's like adding a variety of picks to your locksmith set. The more you have, the easier it is to unlock the cages of conditioning. Another practical application is learning to embrace discomfort. When we encounter opinions or facts that contradict our beliefs, our natural reaction might be to reject them. But these moments of discomfort are where growth happens. Sit with that feeling, explore its roots, and ask yourself whether it's a defensive response to protect a bias. Often, understanding where the discomfort comes from leads to the most profound moments of learning. Consider establishing a habit of playing devil's advocate with yourself. When presented with a viewpoint that aligns with what you believe, make the effort to argue against it. This mental exercise enables you to step outside your automatic agreements and see the validity in opposing perspectives. It's a deliberate application of the invisible key, unlocking doors within your mind you might not have even noticed were closed. Additionally, practicing mindfulness helps us to notice the automatic judgments and biases that often occur without our conscious awareness. Mindfulness techniques encourage us to observe our thoughts and feelings without attachment, identifying biases as they arise in real time. With practice, we can learn to respond to situations with intention rather than through the distorting lens of bias. Feedback loops are also vital. We need to regularly check if the strategies we employ are effective. Find a method that allows you to track your bias-checking behavior, whether it's an app, a diary, or a friend who holds you accountable. Celebrate small victories when you catch a biased thought and redirect it. Over time, these small steps culminate in significant shifts in thinking. With ongoing practice, employing the key of self-awareness to unlock biases can become almost second nature. You will start to notice when you're leaning too heavily on assumption and begin to correct course automatically. But it's important to remember that this doesn't make you immune to biases. Nobody is. It just means you're better equipped to spot and address them. Another aspect to consider is how language shapes our perceptions. It's a subtle yet potent force that can reinforce biases. So, challenge yourself to change up the language you use. If you find yourself describing a particular group in society with the same adjectives, stop. Search for new words. This not only diversifies your vocabulary but also your thought patterns, shaking loose those deeply ingrained biases that hide out in everyday speech. Furthermore, role-playing situations from different perspectives can enhance empathy and understanding. Try to imagine how someone with a completely different background would perceive a situation you're involved in. This exercise can shake the foundation of bias, forcing us to consider angles and rationales we might have otherwise ignored. The ongoing application of these strategies helps to foster an environment where bias becomes less like concrete and more like sand, still there, but shifting and easier to move through and reshape. This signifies a shift from unconscious incompetence to conscious competence, where we are not only aware of biases but are actively working to not let them determine our actions or thoughts. Ultimately, employing the invisible key is an act of self-empowerment and liberation. Not merely breaking free from the chains of bias that constrain us but also actively forging new links that connect us to our true potential. It's about creating a mental space where biases are identified, interrogated, and if not completely eradicated, then at least mitigated. It's about recognizing the power we each hold to color our world with the hues of our choosing, rather than those we've been conditioned to see. Through continuous practice, reflection, and intentional disruption of our bias-confirming habits, we can forge a new reality for ourselves, one where our choices are informed by deep self-awareness and a genuine understanding of the diverse world we inhabit. By employing our invisible key, our examined and informed consciousness, we can begin altering not just the landscape of our minds, but the shared ground of our collective experience. Chapter 5: Rewiring the Brain. Imagine your mind as a bustling city, with a network of roads representing your habitual thought patterns. The most traveled routes, those you've journeyed down countless times, have become wide, fast highways, allowing thoughts and reactions to zip along at speed, often below the conscious level. But sometimes, these superhighways lead us astray, taking us to destinations not reflective of our aspirations, goals, or true selves. How do we forge new paths and establish roads that lead us to where we truly want to go? Welcome to Positive Disruption, where we interrupt those automatic highways of thought and pave new streets to a revitalized mindset. Consider for a moment the numerous daily choices influenced by our habitual patterns. Do you automatically reach for a sweet snack when stressed, despite a desire to eat healthily? Do you instinctively shy away from public speaking opportunities, even though advancing your career requires it? These situations reflect ingrained patterns holding you from emerging goals. The key is to introduce mindful disruptions that overwrite established patterns with roads that respect your current values and ambitions. Take that craving for a sweet snack. When it strikes, it's like a green light flashes on your mental highway, telling you to go straight to the kitchen. What if you installed a roundabout here, a moment of pause, allowing you to take a different exit? That could be a deep breath, a drink of water, a short walk, any action that interrupts the momentum toward the snack cupboard. This roundabout forces you to slow down, to be mindful of the decision at hand. And the more often you make a conscious choice at this juncture, the more comfortable it becomes. Over time, this new route becomes your default path, a new habit forming a street more aligned with your health goals. Now consider the avoidance of public speaking. The gut reaction to decline is an exit ramp off your mental highway you take without thinking. To disrupt this pattern, create a yield sign in your mind through positive affirmation. Before answering, repeat a mantra of capability to yourself, reminding you of your ability to face challenges. As you yield and affirm your potential, you're building a roadside pit stop that lets you reassess the journey ahead. This moment of affirmation can gradually replace the exit ramp of avoidance with a bridge towards opportunity. But how does one go about setting up these mental traffic signs and new routes? It all begins with self-awareness. You must first recognize when you are following a well-trodden, albeit unproductive, route before you can set out to change it. Once you're aware, you employ a little bit of cognitive and behavioral engineering, playfully called a mental traffic engineering, to enact these disruptions. Cognitive restructuring, a therapeutic technique found in cognitive behavioral therapy, offers a powerful tool here. It involves identifying and challenging negative thought patterns and replacing them with more constructive ones. By questioning and adjusting the thoughts that lead you down familiar, unhelpful paths, you pave way for new neurological roads. Behavioral change is another vital tool. It involves intentionally acting differently than your instinctual response. Take the example of someone trying to overcome procrastination, who might normally start their morning by checking emails, thus delaying more significant tasks. Instead, they could disrupt this behavior by launching into a task immediately upon sitting down at their work area, even if it means setting a timer to work on it for only 5 minutes before they're allowed to check their messages. This simple act disrupts the procrastination loop, slowly reprogramming their morning routine towards increased productivity. Another powerful method of positive disruption is environmental design. Our surroundings play a considerable role in influencing our habits. By altering your environment, you can make it easier to forge new paths and avoid old ones. For a person trying to incorporate more reading into their life and less television at night, this might mean keeping a book on the nightstand and the TV remote out of sight, or perhaps even moving the television out of the bedroom altogether. Environmental cues subtly steer you toward the new behaviors you want to adopt. Reflection and journaling can be instrumental in rewiring your thought patterns. When you take time to write down the thoughts and emotions connected to your habits, you pull them into the daylight, making them tangible things you can examine and reshape. It's akin to opening up a city planning map of your mind and deliberately drawing in new streets. This process doesn't just clarify the pattern you want to change, it also ingrains the new ones you intend to establish. Of course, patience and perseverance are paramount in this process of mental transformation. Just as city roads aren't built in a day, your new neural pathways require time and constant effort to be established and strengthened. And bear in mind that the process is neither linear nor always smooth. Just like encountering roadblocks and detours on a construction project, there'll be setbacks and old patterns that re-emerge, especially under stress. That's entirely normal and part of the journey. Every time you choose to follow your new path, despite these challenges, your new neural pathways are reinforced, and the old, less helpful roads begin to deteriorate through neglect. Ultimately, rewiring your brain through positive disruption is about taking conscious control of the direction in which your thoughts and actions flow. It's about creating a mental landscape that supports your aims and aligns with your authentic self. With every mindful detour, every new bridge you construct, you're not only disrupting old patterns, you're constructing a mind that is flexible, capable, and open to continuous growth, ready to take you to destinations of your choosing. This disruptive approach isn't a quick fix. It's a lifelong practice of self-mastery and self-compassion, a commitment to directing the traffic in your mind towards roads paved with purpose and meaning. Imagine for a moment that you're an artist, standing before a formless block of marble. In your hands, you hold the tools to shape, to chip away, and to smooth the surfaces until something beautiful emerges from within. But unlike Michelangelo releasing David from marble, you're working with something much more intricate, much more personal. You're sculpting your thought processes. Yes, your very own neural pathways are the marble, and with intention and skill, you can mold them into forms that serve you, support your goals, and enrich your life. This is the art of becoming the sculptor of your own mind. It all begins with intention. To intentionally mold thought processes is to make a conscious decision to influence and guide your mental habits. It's recognizing that your current thought patterns have been shaped passively by experiences, external inputs, and internal reactions. Yet now, you acknowledge the power, the right, and the ability to take the tools into your own hands and carve purposefully, to design a mindscape that reflects your true aspirations. The medium with which you work is neuroplasticity. This is the brain's amazing ability to change and adapt throughout life. Every time you learn something new or modify your response to a situation, your brain changes. Neural pathways strengthen or weaken, and sometimes new ones are forged, just as a sculptor's chisel creates new contours in the stone. Take, for example, the habit of self-criticism. Each time you counter a self-critical thought with a compassionate one, you're chipping away at the old, undermining pathway and smoothing out a new, supportive trail. Just as a sculptor uses different tools and techniques, you too have a variety of methods at your disposal to sculpt your thinking. One such technique is affirmation, the repetition of positive, empowering statements that can help you to forge new pathways of self-belief and confidence. Just as a sculptor repeatedly hammers and chisels at the marble to shape it, you must repeatedly affirm these statements to yourself to reinforce the new pathways. Visualization is another powerful tool. By vividly imagining a desired outcome or behavior, you engage the brain's wonderful capacity for simulation. Envisioning success in a challenging task can help lay down pathways that lead to actual achievement. It's akin to a sculptor envisioning the finished piece before the first strike of the chisel. The clear vision guides every subsequent action. Another technique is mindfulness. By being present and fully engaged in the moment, you can more easily recognize unhelpful thought patterns as they arise. These are the cracks and imperfections in the marble that need to be addressed. With mindfulness, you can observe them without judgment and then decide the best way to smooth them out or whether they should be part of the final piece, much as a sculptor decides which imperfections to remove and which to incorporate into their art. Challenge your cognitive biases, the shortcuts that your brain takes to make quick judgments. These biases are like the default patterns a sculptor falls into, the familiar strokes repeated without thought. Be aware of them, and make conscious choices to approach your thoughts and decisions from different angles. This act can build new, more nuanced patterns of thinking, allowing for a more intricate and true-to-life sculpture to emerge. Consolidate new thought patterns with practical application. Whenever you're faced with a decision, a problem, or any cognitive task, utilize your new thought patterns intentionally. It's just as a sculptor who, after planning an initial chiseling, must continually refine and apply finishing touches. Each real-world application is like these finishing touches, the details that transform a rough form into a masterpiece. The question then becomes, how do you maintain the sculpture that is your thought process? How do you ensure that the new pathways don't become overgrown with the vines of old habits? Maintenance, like that for any great artwork, requires regular attention and care. You need to continue practicing these techniques, reinforcing the new pathways, and challenging yourself to refine and develop your mental sculpture. Remember, self-improvement is not an all-or-nothing venture. It's an ongoing, gradual process. Sculptors don't expect to complete a masterpiece in a single stroke, and you shouldn't expect to overhaul your thought process in an instant. Each small action, each moment of mindful choice, is like a single tap of the chisel shaping your personal work of art. Exploring this metaphor further, think about how a sculptor deals with missteps. Sometimes, a chip might come off in an unintended way, or the material might not respond as anticipated. When this happens, the artist doesn't abandon the work. They assess, adapt, and integrate the change into their vision. You too must be willing to accept and work with the natural ebbs and flows of mental change. Finally, let's talk about the inspiration. A sculptor draws inspiration from life, from the human form, from emotion, and from the natural world. Likewise, seek out sources of inspiration to fuel your mental transformation. This inspiration can come from the experiences of others, from books, from art, from nature, anywhere that stimulates your mind and encourages growth. By understanding and accepting this sculpting process, you embrace the potential within yourself. The potential to change, to grow, to chip away at the unhelpful and to highlight the beautiful. Remember, the brain is not inert stone, it's living tissue, constantly evolving, ready to be shaped by a skilled and intentional hand. So, wield your tools with determination, celebrate every small achievement, and step back regularly to appreciate the evolving work of art that is your thought process. With time, you'll not only become the sculptor of your own mind, but also create a masterpiece of self-improvement that is unique, resilient, and infinitely adaptable. Chapter 6: The Transformative Leap. Embarking upon the transformative journey of self-improvement and personal growth is no small feat. It requires a conscious commitment to not just recognize and understand the biases and conditioned responses we've explored in previous chapters, but also to take an active stance in altering these deep-rooted patterns. It's like being an explorer at the threshold of an unknown territory, knowing that each step forward reshapes the map of one's psyche. To progress from realization to a revolution within ourselves, we must appreciate that our newfound insights are not just food for thought, but catalysts for action. This phase in the journey is where we make the audacious leap from knowing better to doing better. It is the embodiment of our learning, where the rubber meets the road. It's easy to become enamored with the idea of change, but now, we need to become the agents of that change, actively participating in reshaping our narratives and forging new habits. The process, much like mastering a complex dance, is dynamic and rhythmic. It's learning the steps by heart and then performing them with grace under the spotlight of everyday situations. To initiate this shift, we must first set tangible objectives. Setting goals can feel daunting, but remember, the loftiest of skyscrapers are built one brick at a time. Each small, deliberate action is a building block in constructing the grand edifice of the self we aspire to become. When we break down the journey into manageable steps, we not only make it easier to navigate but also track our progress, maintain our motivation, and build upon small successes to power through challenges. Begin by pinpointing specific biases or patterns you've uncovered and define simple, measurable actions you can take to counteract them. For instance, if you've recognized a tendency to shy away from confrontations due to a bias for harmony over truth, you might set a goal to assert your perspective in the next team meeting, gentle yet firm. Implementing these actions is akin to a gardener nurturing his seeds. Each bias we challenge, each habitual reaction we curb, each alternative viewpoint we consider, is like watering these seeds of change, providing them the environment to germinate and grow. For example, when faced with a choice, pause and reflect on the decision-making process. Are you relying solely on instinct, or are you evaluating evidence? Are you considering others' viewpoints? This reflective pause is a powerful tool, acting as a buffer between stimulus and response, giving the necessary space to maneuver your actions away from conditioned biases. As with any form of learning, expect resistance, not just from your internal status quo, but also from those accustomed to your former self. Change is unsettling, but it's important to distinguish between discomfort born from growth and that emanating from genuine distress. Embrace the discomfort of growth, it is a sign you are pushing against the borders of your previous self. This resistance is where resilience is forged and the metamorphosis from realization to action takes shape. Think of yourself as a pioneer in your personal frontier. Each win, no matter the size, is a landmark in this untouched landscape. To anchor these strides in revolutionizing oneself, it is crucial to cultivate an environment that supports your transformation. Surround yourself with individuals who value growth and introspection, those who are not afraid to challenge their own biases. Just as the strongest of trees do not grow in the shelter of one another's shadows, we too need an environment that allows us to reach towards the light of self-actualization. Building a supportive network also involves seeking and providing feedback. Feedback serves as a mirror, reflecting not merely our actions, but the intentions and biases that fuel them. It is a pivot around which we can dance skillfully, adjusting our steps to ensure we are moving in the right direction. When well received, feedback is not a critique but a roadmap provided by our fellow travelers, showing us where we may have strayed and where we can find our path again. In this journey from realization to revolution, accountability is your compass. Holding ourselves accountable can sometimes demand an inner sternness, a resolve to call ourselves out when we backslide or resort to our old, comfortable biases. Yes, there will be moments of backpedaling, that is the nature of human complexity. However, each act of self-accountability is a declaration of our dedication to this transformative leap, a reminder that we are works in progress, and the pursuit of personal growth is both unrelenting and unending. As we near the end of this chapter, it is important to acknowledge the complexity of the journey. The leap from realizing one's biases to actively revolutionizing one's patterns of thought and action is neither linear nor devoid of setbacks. It is a dance, a rhythm, a daily practice of choosing the aspirational over the habitual. The transformation is ongoing, with new hurdles and new insights emerging at each bend in the road. And while this segment of our guidebook concludes, remember that every end is just a new beginning. As the chapters of our lives unfold, the skills and mindsets we cultivate become part of the narrative we write each day. The leap, indeed, is not just a step but a span, an arc of transformation that propels us, revolutionizing not only our inner world, but the world around us as we navigate the landscape of biases and reshape it with every conscious act of will and wisdom. In Chapter 6.2, The Evolution of You, we're passing through the threshold from a space of fresh understanding into a vibrant ecosystem of growth and progress. Here's where we crystallize our realizations into concrete, habitual actions, the kind that reshape our daily life and echo outwards, influencing every interaction, every decision, and every moment of reflection. It's not enough to know the steps to overcome bias, you must embody them, transform them into the sinew and bones of your lived experience. After all, it is in the day-to-day application of our insights that the subtle, indelible evolution of ourselves truly occurs. With each stride forward, you're carving out a path that's uniquely yours. Imagine a sculptor chiseling away at a block of marble. The first few strikes may seem inconsequential, lost in the massiveness of the untouched stone, however, with sustained effort, a form begins to emerge. Your efforts to understand and move beyond your biases are much like this process. At first, the undertaking is immense, daunting even, but every attempt at questioning a long-held belief, every effort to embrace a new perspective, and every conscious pause before a reactive judgment shapes your persona, your intellect, and your essence. The journey is incremental, and that's the beauty of it. Small changes accumulate, compound, and eventually lead to significant transformation. It's akin to the way nature operates. A seed doesn't become a mighty oak overnight. It takes time and persistence, and it's the accumulation of little, everyday habits that culminate in your personal revolution. If you've been meticulously journaling your thoughts, examining the origin of your biases, and challenging them, then you've been nurturing that seed every day. With each passing day, it's been taking root, growing stronger and sturdier, and now, it begins to extend its branches outward. Documenting this process serves a dual purpose. It's both a testament to your progress and a reflective mirror, showing you the contours of your personal growth. When you feel like progress is invisible, look back at your earlier entries. You'll see the shape of your thoughts altering, the narrative tangibly shifting. Your log is a narrative of change, a map of mental exploration, and a beacon for times when the path seems enveloped in fog. It tells a story not just of where you were, but of the new horizons you're now capable of envisioning. Celebrating these incremental changes is crucial. It's easy to gloss over the small victories, but they're pivotal. They're the threads that weave the tapestry of your evolved self. Say, for example, you found yourself at a crossroads needing to make a decision that would typically be influenced by your innate confirmation bias. Rather than falling into that automatic pattern, you chose to invite diverse perspectives, to give weight to information that challenged your pre-existing beliefs. It may not feel seismic at the time, but it's these moments that herald true intellectual and emotional evolution. As your biases diminish through practice and persistence, the world around you gradually takes on a different hue. You begin to see people not as caricatures formed by your prior judgments, but as complex individuals, unique in their combination of experiences and ideas. You'll find yourself more engaged in conversations, listening deeply, truly listening, rather than aligning what you hear with what you presume to know. Your relationships blossom as a result, as they're no longer muddied by unchecked biases. Bonds grow stronger and more authentic when they are rooted in genuine curiosity and openness. Moreover, the professional benefits of this personal evolution are manifold. Clarity of thought unobstructed by bias breeds innovation. Decision-making becomes not just a task you perform but an art you master, taking into account a spectrum of variables once overlooked. You become a linchpin in your work environment, revered for your holistic approach and foresight. And what about the bigger picture, the aggregate effect of this evolution of you? Your transformation ripples outward, influencing those you interact with daily. Your willingness to confront and conquer your biases empowers others to consider their own, to recognize the shackles of unexamined assumptions holding them back, to initiate their own journey of self-improvement. This is how society at large begins to shift, through the collective action of individual transformations, through each person becoming, as you have, a sculptor of their own biases, a curator of a more conscious, inclusive mindset. Embrace this transformative leap, and remember it's not a destination but a perpetual motion, it's the evolution of you. With every bias identified and addressed, with every reflexive thought pattern disrupted and reformed, you're not just changing the map of your own intellect, but also the societal landscape. And though unlikely to be heralded with fanfare or momentous applause, these triumphs are no less deserving, for they represent the triumph of the human spirit, a spirit endlessly capable of introspection, of learning, and ultimately, of profound self-evolution. Chapter 7: Living in a World of Bias. Welcome to a pivotal part of our journey, the one where we step out of our personal cocoon of understanding and step into the wide world brimming with a plethora of biases, a world not of our making, yet one that we navigate daily. We've all had this moment, standing at the crossroads of our personal development, where we realize that the battleground for bias isn't solely within but also without, stretching across the society we live in, influencing and being influenced by everyone, every day. Every person you meet, every group you're a part of, and every societal system you interact with are colorized with the brush of bias, some subtle, others not so. Nevertheless, the understanding that you've gained about your personal biases holds immense power in steering not only your interactions, but also in contributing positively to the collective consciousness. Let's talk practicality. How exactly do you navigate a world filled with others' biases, especially coming from different backgrounds than yours? It begins with recognition. You've learned to spot the biases in yourself, but recognizing them in others requires a vigilant eye and an open mind. Understand that biases in society often manifest as stereotypes, generalized beliefs about a particular group of people, or prejudices, unfavorable opinions formed without knowledge, thought, or reason. It's not just about pinpointing them, it's about understanding the stories and experiences behind them. Here's an approach to consider when you encounter societal biases: empathy. Empathy doesn't mean that you have to agree with the biased views of others, far from it. It means stepping into their shoes, perceiving the world from their viewpoint, even for a moment. This exercise is not to justify their biased attitudes, but to understand the context out of which they arose. When you approach people with empathy, the dialogue opens, and with open dialogue comes the opportunity for awareness and change. Now, approaching conversations with empathy doesn't mean you let biased remarks slide by. It's about picking your battles. Decide when to confront bias and when it's more efficient to let the moment pass, reserving energy for more impactful encounters. When you do choose to address bias, do so constructively. Instead of pointing fingers, ask questions that encourage self-reflection in others, just as you have learned to do for yourself. Gentle questioning such as, "What makes you say that?" or "Have you considered a different perspective?" can nudge people to reassess their views. In addition to engaging in meaningful conversations, become a model of unbiased behavior yourself. Make it a point to mix with diverse groups, openly challenge stereotypes, and share your experiences of overcoming personal biases. It's an effective way to showcase the value of bias-free thinking without being overtly didactic. Remember that you, too, can be a societal mirror, reflecting back a less biased image for others to emulate. There will be times, though, when despite the best efforts, you'll meet resistance. Not everyone is prepared to face their biases, some don't even recognize them. This is where patience and persistence come in. Change often happens slowly, through consistent pressure and the gradual build-up of new ideas seeping into the public consciousness. Your consistent presence, your unwavering commitment to an unbiased lifestyle, becomes a drop in the societal pond that can send ripples far and wide. Furthermore, equip yourself with an arsenal of information. The more you know, the better you are at dismantling stereotypes. For instance, understanding the facts about different cultures and religions, or knowing the historical context behind certain social issues enables you to educate others with confidence. This isn't about showing off your knowledge, it's about using it as a tool for enlightenment when the opportunity arises. You also need to cultivate resilience because, let's face it, facing the world's biases is not a one-off event, it's an ongoing challenge. It requires inner strength to avoid sinking into frustration and cynicism. One of the best ways to build this resilience is by creating or seeking out a support community. Within these groups, you can discuss experiences, share strategies, and uplift each other when the going gets tough. Knowing you're not alone in this endeavor can keep you motivated and focused on the greater good. Simultaneously, guard against becoming too myopic in your focus on biases. Don't let them consume your worldview. Balance your awareness with the understanding that beauty, kindness, and fairness also exist and are as worthy of your attention. Bias is but one thread in the social tapestry, and genuinely appreciating the whole picture requires attention to the positive as well. Finally, don't overlook the power of small actions. Sometimes, it's the little things that make the most significant differences: choosing not to laugh at a prejudiced joke, opting out of a group that promotes exclusionary practices, or standing up for someone when they are subject to bias. These moments define the kind of individual and society we want to be part of. Living in a world of bias is not about heroics, and it's not about perfection. It's about acknowledging that biases exist and accepting the role we each play in perpetuating or dispelling them. It's about knowing when to speak up and when to listen carefully. It's about being brave enough to confront the uncomfortable and compassionate enough to do it with kindness. Master this, and you become more than just a navigator in a biased world. You become a beacon of change, a lighthouse guiding others to more informed and open-minded shores. Your journey through this complex landscape is not merely a test of endurance, but an exploration of human nature and a commitment to bettering the society we all share. Have you ever stopped to ponder the ripple effects of personal change? As you embark on this journey of uncovering and challenging your own biases, it's critical to acknowledge that this process does not merely end with you. The potential for expansiveness lies in every action taken to rectify personal prejudices, and this is where the concept of becoming a beacon in a world riddled with bias shines with stunning clarity. Imagine yourself as a stone cast into the vast ocean of society. The ripples you create through your awareness and transformation send waves through the fabric of our shared existence. You're not just navigating through a sea of personal biases, but also moving through a world steeped in varied perspectives shaped by unique experiences. This complex environment, with its intricate tapestry of thoughts and attitudes, is perpetually influenced by each individual's actions and inactions. To truly appreciate the effect that a single person can have in a collective context, consider the power of living by example. You, having faced the challenges of recognizing and breaking away from deeply ingrained biases, now stand as a testament to the possibility of change. Your journey provides a template, perhaps even a source of inspiration, for others who might find themselves tangled in their own webs of bias. The way you integrate and express the insights gleaned from your introspection sets a standard for others to follow. It's not about preaching or conversion, rather it's about the gentle art of demonstration. A powerful yet often overlooked facet of becoming a beacon is the subtlety of your influence. Small, consistent action steeped in self-awareness and empathy can cause others to reflect on their own biases. Engaging with people from a place of openness and understanding, especially when it's evident that you have worked tirelessly to cultivate these qualities within yourself, encourages those around you to question their own standing and potentially seek their paths to enlightenment. This is not an instantaneous or dramatic shift, but rather a gradual awakening within others, kindled by the steadfast glow of your example. The way you interact, the language you choose, and the openness with which you engage with differing viewpoints all contribute to this process. Through your navigation, through conversations and disputes, even through your mere presence in a room, you influence the dynamics at play. When you remain composed and empathetic in situations where prejudices often run rampant, you offer a glimpse into a world where acceptance and understanding reign supreme. And then there's the realm of decision-making. Having honed the skill of recognizing your biases, your actions and decisions reflect a level of thoughtfulness that can't help but be noticed. Whether it's at work, within your community, or among friends and family, the choices you make from a place of mindful clarity don't just solve immediate problems or enrich your relationships, they serve as silent lessons in the art of conscious decision-making. As a beacon, your presence and actions also bear the power to challenge existing structures and norms with the potential to propagate change. As you navigate within your workplace or community, your unbiased stance can become a catalyst for dialogue and reform, provoking others to question and renovate practices that have long been accepted without scrutiny. This transformative influence emerges not from overt activism, but through the quiet strength of your convictions and the consistent application of the principles you've adopted. Moreover, your journey doesn't exist in a vacuum. While you resonate change within your circles, you're also contributing to a broader, global shift in consciousness. It's a change that is desperately needed in today's world, and every drop in the ocean counts. As individuals untangle the knots of their biases and prejudices, their newly found perspectives weave into the collective human experience, allowing us to move toward a society that prizes understanding over judgment, open-mindedness over dogmatism, and empathy over apathy. Undoubtedly, this isn't an easy task, and it's not without its challenges. Standing against the current of conventional thinking, especially when it's riddled with biases, can be an isolating experience. However, it's in the steadfast commitment to your principles that the true essence of a beacon is found, steadily shining its light, guiding others through the murkiness, and enabling them to find their own paths. Remember that the brightest lighthouses are often found standing firm amidst the stormiest of seas. So what does it take to stay aglow amidst the winds of bias? It requires patience, resilience, and a deep-seated belief in the impact of your own evolution. It's about recognizing that the change within you holds the potential to ignite a spark in someone else's darkness. It's embracing the reality that the actions you've deemed personal are, in fact, profoundly universal. As you continue to engage with the world around you, infused with new perspectives gained from navigating your biases, keep alive the spirit of kindness and continual learning. Remember, the goal is not to illuminate a path of righteousness for others to follow unerringly, but to empower them to light their own torches, to explore their unique paths, and, in turn, become beacons themselves. In this interconnected world we share, the transformation of one has the power to influence the many. By living as a testament to self-improvement, you contribute to the global shifts in perception that will, hopefully, one day culminate in a world defined by diversity in harmony, rather than divided by differences. Your journey through bias, with all its trials and triumphs, doesn't merely reshape you, it reshapes the world. And that is the true essence of becoming a beacon in a world of bias. Conclusion. As we come to the close of our unique journey through the intricate landscape of our own biases, it's essential to pause and reflect on the distance we've traveled together. You embarked on this path as a curious explorer, perhaps unaware of the extent to which unseen biases shape your reality. But now, you stand at a vantage point where much of that once elusive terrain lies demystified before you. We've walked through the shadowed valleys of assumption, climbed the steep inclines of societal influence, and stood at the precipice of personal breakthrough. You've learned that biases aren't just a part of you, they are a part of the human condition. They slip into your mind's inner workings as easily as dappled light through the leaves of a forest, often beautiful, yet sometimes obscuring the path ahead. These biases have painted your world with brushstrokes you didn't choose, yet you've learned how to see the canvas beneath, and even to pick up the brush for yourself. Understanding the origins and structures shaping our perceptions has been enlightening, a cognitive revelation that pressures the seams of previously accepted truths. We've placed a mirror before society itself, uncovering the reflections of collective consciousness that subtly, yet inexorably guide individual thought. You've glimpsed the puppeteers of influence and learned the art of seeing the strings. Empowered, you have begun the process of severing those that bound you to actions and thoughts not inherently your own. And in the stories we tell ourselves, you've seen the semblance of bias living within the narrative structures of your mind. You've recognized the neurological levels of biases, stripping away layers to expose the raw pulses of thought eager to become something different, something chosen. Together, we've planted the seeds of change, teasing you with the notion that the key to transformation lay just beyond the turn of a page. That key, once invisible, soon became clear. No longer a tool of mystics or the enlightened few, it revealed itself as something wonderfully prosaic, conscious awareness and choice. We dove into the heart of mental patterns and biases, uncovering the junctions where decisions fork and destiny diverges. You saw the bars of the cage we all inhabit, bars made of habit, history, and human nature. Then, with steady hands, you employed the key, unlocking the cage of conditioning. We ventured further, applying positive disruption to your regular streams of thought and reaction. Patterns once immutable became pliable under your newfound skill. You stepped into the role of sculptor of your mental clay, no longer a passive recipient of pre-programmed responses. Just as clay requires both firmness and delicacy to shape it, so too does the human brain require intentional, deliberate, and sensitive manipulation to transform. Beyond personal revolution, you dared to apply your enlightenment on a broader scale. You took your realizations and translated them into everyday revolutions, turning insights into actions and fostering an evolution of self. Every change, while perhaps slight, became meaningful as you documented and celebrated your incremental metamorphosis. What was once automatic, unexamined, and often unhelpful behavioral patterns evolved into conscious choices aligning with your values and goals. The greatest transformation was both personal and all-encompassing. You learned how to live in a world rife with bias, not by succumbing to its pressures, but by navigating its currents with intelligence and grace. We discussed strategies for dealing with a society of varied backgrounds, opinions, and prejudices, and you emerged as a beacon of change, a single point of light that, when joined by others, can illuminate a path forward for humanity. This is far beyond merely coping with a biased world. This is about thriving in spite of it and contributing positively to the collective consciousness. It's also about recognizing that your personal transformation has the potential to affect the greater societal landscape. By altering your perceptions and reactions, you indirectly influence those around you, who in turn reflect the changes outward in an ever-growing wave of transformation. Through this endeavor, you've been armed with a resolute understanding that growth, learning, and self-improvement aren't one-off achievements, but ongoing processes. As you continue to apply the strategies and practices we've discussed, remember that the journey does not have an end point, but is a perpetual path of progression. Your potential for intellectual expansion, emotional depth, and societal influence is never fully realized. There is always another layer to uncover, another bias to apprehend, another assumption to challenge. You've come to see that biases aren't your enemies. They are guides that once served purpose, but now indicate where your next area of growth lies. They are like old maps, a starting point for exploration, but not accurate representations of the current landscape. Challenge them, learn from them, and move beyond them. In affirming your potential for transformation, we acknowledge the capacity within you to become more than what you were, more understanding, more accepting, more aware. The ripples of your growth extend outward, impacting your personal relationships, professional success, and overall well-being. The skill of recognizing and overcoming biases extends into every facet of your existence, reshaping how you interact with the world. The messages of hope, encouragement, and challenge delivered throughout this guide are but a reflection of the incredible potential that has always existed within you. By mastering the skill of bias recognition and adaptation, by striving for a life of continuous learning and growth, you are not just bettering yourself, you are advocating for a more enlightened, less biased, and profoundly richer human experience for all. To engage with the world around you with clarity, creativity, and compassion is not just the act of breaking bias, it's the art of actualizing the breadth of your humanity. It's the uncovering, the actualizing, and the thriving of your spirit in a realm fraught with illusion but ripe with the possibility of truth and transformation. Here we conclude not an ending, but a beckoning to broader horizons. Carry forth the wisdom you've gleaned, and step confidently into the ongoing adventure of reshaping your universe from the inside out.